Namaskar and a very good morning. I am Sudha Shrestha, Deputy Director of Nepal Rashtra Bank, and I will be your MC for today's opening session. Please allow me to commence the inaugural ceremony. On behalf of Nepal Rashtra Bank, I am extremely delighted to extend to you all a very warm welcome to the 3rd International Conference on Economics and Finance hosted by Nepal Rashtra Bank today and tomorrow. Let me now proceed with the inaugural program with a humble request to the distinguished guests of honor to take their seats on the stage. We are honored to have our chief guest, Honorable Finance Minister Dr. Yuvraj Khatiwada, who joined us this morning, accepting our invitation despite his busy schedule. We are pleased to have Honorable Governor of Nepal Rashtra Bank, Dr. Chiranjeevi Nepal, for his gracious presence in this event. We are equally privileged to have respected Finance Secretary and Board Member of Nepal Rashtra Bank, Mr. Shishir Kumar Dhungana, to be with us. We are also pleased to have Deputy Governor of Nepal Rashtra Bank, Mr. Chintamani Sivakoti, for his presence. Thank you, sir. We are glad to have Deputy Governor and Chairperson of the Conference Organizing Committee, Mr. Shivaraj Shrestha, to be with us. Also, it is our privilege to have our board members of Nepal Rashtra Bank, Mr. Ramji Regmi and Dr. Subodh Kumar Khan, to be with us. Thank you, sir. We are grateful to the NPC members, former governors, representative of development partners, our foreign delegates, executive directors, and other officials of Nepal Rashtra Bank for your presence in this event. Last but not the least, thank you to all our distinguished guests, paper presenters, participants, media friends, and all our invitees who have traveled from near and far to make this conference a huge success. Ladies and gentlemen, Nepal Rashtra Bank has been organizing the international conference since 2012. We are pleased to welcome you to the 3rd International Conference, which is expected to bring policymakers, practitioners, and researchers together to discuss economic and financial sector issues. We believe this conference will create ample opportunities for researchers, academicians, policymakers to share their research and ideas in the field of economics and finance. Now, to mark the beginning of this glorious event, I request all of you to kindly rise and grace the national anthem. Thank you, everyone. I now request all the distinguished delegates to kindly take your seats. So without any further ado, I would now like to invite respected Executive Director and member of the Conference Organizing Committee, Dr. Gunakar Bhatta, to present his welcome remarks.
Honorable Finance Minister, Honorable Governor, Honorable Member of the National Planning Commission, respected Finance Secretary, Board members of Nepal Rashtra Bank, respected Deputy Governors, former governors, representatives from donor agencies, CEOs of banks and financial institutions, industrialists and business communities, conference participants, distinguished guests, media persons, colleagues at Nepal Rashtra Bank, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I am privileged to welcome you all to the 3rd International Conference on Economics and Finance. It's really an honor for Nepal Rashtra Bank to welcome you all on this special occasion. I respect all our international participants and speakers who spent their time to come to Nepal and observe this conference. Particularly, I respect your courage to break the outbreak of the corona that is taking toll on human lives and economy around the world. I have a deep respect to our chief guest, Honorable Finance Minister, for gracing us with his presence despite his busy schedule. Honorable Minister, your invaluable presence reminds us your deep bond with Nepal Rashtra Bank. I think this is a matter of pride for us and coincidence for Honorable Minister not to miss any of the international conferences so far. In fact, the last two conferences were observed when Honorable Finance Minister was the Governor of Nepal Rashtra Bank. Let me welcome all dignitaries sitting on the dais, our respected former governors, deputy governors, senior government officials, senior resident representatives of the IMF Shark Tank Director, the World Bank Country Manager, the World Bank Regional Advisor, and all distinguished guests, paper presenters, and participants. Ladies and gentlemen, knowledge has no boundaries. The Third International Conference on Economics and Finance has been organized in the same spirit. It is an opportunity to discuss research findings and share experiences which can be used for policy shaping. Here, ideas and solutions will emerge, policy tools will evolve, and evaluation techniques will develop. It is up to researchers to decide whether the partial equilibrium approach, taking consideration of the Robinson-Crusoe model discussed in macroeconomics, or the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model discussed in advanced macro, fits well to describe the evolving socio-economic and behavioral issues of the global economy. This two-day conference covers a wide range of topics. Our researchers will delve into a number of issues ranging from macro foundation, behavioral economics, and modeling of deep parameters, as Nobel laureate Robert Luca envisioned nearly half century ago, commonly known as the Luca critic. Ladies and gentlemen, we are always in the dynamics of optimization with resource constraint. Even if there is corner solution, we ask and we seek space for potential Pareto improvement. For developing countries and least developed countries, issues always revolve around growth, inequality, poverty, and stability. Even these have become major pressing issues in the advanced world as well. Striking a balance among these mutually reinforcing as well as conflicting goals requires deep understanding of theories and practices, what the Nobel laureate Robert Shiller argued before and immediately after the global financial crisis, to harmonize sophisticated models and complex human behaviors. That is even more relevant today. We don't need to go far this time to see the irrational exuberance coined by former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan for the last few weeks. What we see in the asset market of Nepal reminds us to revisit the book written by Robert Shiller, Irrational Exuberance. We need to remember what Rogoff and Reinhardt warned us in their book. This time is different, but in reality, this time is not different. Ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful and overwhelmed for response we got for the conference. It was very hard for us to select papers from what was similar to mountain of papers. The organizing committee heartily welcomes all the paper presenters as well as paper submitters. We ensured high standard of the conference. The conference would not have been possible without your sleepless nights to pen down ideas. I'm confident that new areas will be uncovered and further applicable solutions will emerge in deliberations. This will help us to regain our economies even in difficult times. Nobel laureate Banerjee and Duflo have come with their recent book entitled Good Policies for Hard Times. Professionally speaking, times are hard, both at home and abroad. There are suspicions of another episode of the Great Recession. Nevertheless, we need to explore ways policy dialogue and business sessions today and tomorrow will guide us and expedite solutions. Insulating from corona pandemic and possible global slowdown necessitates dialogue and deliberations. Thus, the conference organized by Nepal Rashtra Bank is highly relevant. Ladies and gentlemen, Nepal is celebrating Visit Nepal 2020. I feel immense pleasure to heartily welcome all our international participants. You have come to a country of scenic beauty and rich culture. We have planned a brief city tour for our foreign friends. I'm sure you will love visiting around, but it is like point in a circle. I recommend you to stay longer, visit more places, and enjoy our hospitality. Lastly, I believe that the conference will be engaging and entertaining, reward everyone, and will have many takeaways. You can certainly guess we have high hopes. It gives us motivation to continue the endeavors like this to bring scholars together and help designing policies for sustainable and inclusive development. I welcome you all once again and wish you a pleasant stay in Kathmandu. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your warm welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin the auspicious opening ceremony, may I have the honor of inviting our chief guest, Honorable Finance Minister Dr. Yuvraj Khatibara, to inaugurate the ceremony by lighting the lamp and grace this event. Thank you, sir, for inaugurating the conference. May I now request Honorable Governor Dr. Chiranjeevi Nepal for his inaugural address.
Honorable Finance Minister, Deputy Governors, Board Member of Nepal Rashtra Bank, former governors, representatives from the donor agencies, CEOs of bank and financial institutions, industrialists, business personalities, conference participants, and distinguished guests, media persons, ladies and gentlemen. It is a matter of great pleasure for me to deliver the inaugural address in this August gathering. I highly appreciate your participation in this international conference on economic and finance, and would highlight that the first international conference was held in 2012, April, and the second international conference was held in 2015, February. And we are organizing this conference after some gaps since our main building were severely damaged in the disastrous earthquake of 2015, April. Nevertheless, Nepal is in the process of rebuilding, and the reconstruction, along with the ongoing reconstruction of the central bank building. And here we are organizing the third international conference. I am delighted to see the many academicians, professionals, and experts in this conference. Some of you had participated in our conference earlier. And while some of you may be here for the first time, I am thankful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Finance Ministers, distinguished guests, and participants for accepting our invitation and joining us. The conference provides an opportunity for all of us to share our knowledge and experience, and which will help to develop the new insights and approaches in the policy decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, uncertainty is hovering over the global economy. The IMF projects the world economy to expand by 3.3% in 2020 and 3.4% in 2021. However, the recent coronavirus outbreak in neighboring China and in some part of the world is building a downward risk on growth paths. In the context of Nepal, we observe an encouraging growth in the last 3 years, the 7.3% growth on average, which contained the inflation was unleashed out the better prospects. This experience has made us aware that buttressing internal productivity and the production help us to foster the growth and subdue inflation. Nepal's external sector situation is comfortable with a surplus balance of payments. As mid of January, existing gross foreign exchange reserve is sufficient to finance 8.4 months of prospective merchandise and the service imports. And despite some challenges, the financial sector of Nepal has remained stable. The banking sectors lending to the national priority sectors such as agriculture, energy, and tourism has increased. and the interest rate has remained stable. In the recent past, the financial expansion has set an exemplary precedent. The Nepal federal structure had encouraged us to widen the financial network. Additional 41% the new branches of banks and financial institutions have been established in the last 1.5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, as a central bank, the major objective of Nepal Rashtra Bank is to formulate monetary, foreign exchange and financial policy to maintain the price, external and financial stability. And we are committed to this objective along with facilitating growth through the resource management. Nepal Rashtra Bank is in the process of modernizing the monetary policy framework, and we have introduced a short-term interest rate as an operating target. Gradually, the modernization process is moving ahead. Similarly, our effort in channelizing the resources to the most productive sector of the economy have been paying off. The lending of bank and financial institutions to agriculture, energy, and the tourism sector has increased. This is evident from the accelerated generation of energy through the independent power producers. 4 years ago, the energy produced by the private sector was 256 megawatt. And today it stands at 651 megawatt. And around the 400 megawatt additional power generation is largely supported by the bank and financial institutions. And NRB has accorded top priority to consolidations of the banking system. Banks have become the stronger after they successfully raised the paid-up capital. This has led to the 185 bank and financial institutions entered in the mergers process, which has resulted in the formation of 45 bank and financial institutions. Significant work has been done in modernizing the domestic payment system. We have launched the real-time gross settlement system, RTGS, last year, and which now facilitate the clearance and settlement of high-value checks in real time. The bank has also implemented the Supervisory Information System, SIS, which is likely to encourage the efficiency and effectiveness in data gathering and analyzing. Nevertheless, Nepal's financial sector has a number of issues to consider. The priority is to given to the channelize the additional resources to agriculture, tourism, and energy, SMEs, and manufacturing sector also. And these will help us to manage the import and lead to the sustainable growth. Building more inclusive and stable financial system is a common agenda for all of us. Recent adverse shocks in the global economy are the common threat for all the policymakers around the world. The recent corona outbreak has heightened challenges to the policymaker both in the ensuring the growth and maintaining the stability. And this conference is an avenue for all of us to foster the dialogue in surmounting the challenges facing in global, regional, and domestic economy. Ladies and gentlemen, in this conference, participants will present their findings from the research study on various topics relating to the macroeconomy, monetary policy, financial development, fiscal federalism, growth and inequality, among others. I believe this conference become an important platform not only for presenting research finding among the scholars, but also for sharing the ideas for policy designing and formulations. The policy dialogue immediately after the session on inclusive and sustainable growth will help us broaden our the understanding on the growth and inclusion. I hope this session will not only outline the broader direction for inclusive and sustainable growth agenda for Nepal, but also for other countries in the regions. Ladies and gentlemen, Central Bank plays significant role in the facilitating economic growth and development of the nation while maintaining the price and financial stability. The new ideas, theory, and knowledge continuously evolve, and it is necessary that Central Bank remain aware of such emerging ideas. And this is one of the reasons why This kind of event is important. Lastly, I once again appreciate the presence of honorable finance ministers and participations of the resources experts, paper presenter, and delegates in this conference. I look forward to active participation from all and am expecting that the ideas and outcome exchange will help us to better understand the economic issues, and constructive suggestion presented will help us design the appropriate policies. I am confident that this conference will set a new path in the academic million and policy sphere. The successful completion of this conference will further encourage us to continue this great tradition in days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this valuable address. May I once again request Honorable Finance Minister Dr. Yuvaraj Khatiwara to deliver his keynote speech.
Governor and Deputy Governors of the Central Bank, board members of the Central Bank, former governors, my friends from the World Bank and IMF, my friends from the regulatory bodies of the state, friends from Nepal Rashtra Bank, senior colleagues from the private sector, and friends from the banking community. A very good morning. Very pleased to be here this morning to speak at the occasion of this international conference on some of the issues that emerge as of today for any policymaker and practitioner. As this seminar is third in the row in the last several years, I think we have come to a bit different stage of discussion compared to the previous international seminars. As the global economy, the regional economies, and national economy are also in a transition to several policy models or policy prescriptions. Particularly, Nepal is in a federal state now as compared to the previous time when we were having similar kind of international conference. When I say we are at the crossroads, I must mention that the conventional wisdom that trade liberalization, economic liberalization, and flow of finances would maximize growth and reduce poverty expeditiously. That notion held true for some time. It was the result of those kind of policy initiatives that the world was able to reduce poverty. But along with poverty reduction, we saw many other side effects. It was not as easy to also increase jobs along with growth. Second, often with growth, coupled was inequality. And coupled with growth, there was several other implications to the society and the environment, and then to the climate change issues. So, we started talking sustainable development. And this is where the sustainable development goals are in operation now for the last 3-4 years. And that encompasses every aspect of development, the economic, social, environment, and governance included. So how do we reach there? The topic of this international seminar is an open dialogue because we talk about economics and finance. But ultimately, the end of all economic policies, practices is to see that there is positive change in the lives of human beings, along with maintaining and protecting the social and environmental lives to give better future to our coming generations. So in that case, I would like this conference to have a debate on how long will trade liberalization keep on propelling growth process. How long will foreign investment keep on propelling growth process if that's not sufficiently driven by technology and technology transfer in particular? And if this capital doesn't generate much of the domestic capacity also to keep on growing at a later stage when the capital flows back, or at the stage of countries revisiting their existing external policies, particularly in terms of economic relations, which are often reflected in trade tensions and withdrawal from the compacts. It might be climate-related compact, or it could be compact related to global trading regimes. This retreat kind of tendency and our conventional wisdom that liberalization will continue propelling growth. I think this is time that we revisit all our policies in the context of new challenges. Challenges both in terms of maintaining stability, but also in terms of seeing better lives in future. Particularly the orientation towards welfareism. Countries have observed that their growth alone has not ensured equality, it has not ensured justice, it has not ensured inclusiveness in true sense, and that implying that the social protection, social security, and for that matter broader social welfare programs are on the rise. And any welfare programs without a reasonably high and sustainable growth becomes at some stage self-defeating. That also we know. So how to link growth with inclusiveness through also social protection measures, and to see that social protection measure itself is an intervention to promote human capital, to promote productivity, and then to enhance production. I think that cycle we should understand, and the conventional wisdom of the major factors of production being generated to propel high growth perhaps doesn't work anymore. Land anyway is getting limited in supply, is rather squeezing due to settlements and other erosions. We don't have much of the forest anyway to tap on, as the developing countries often used to do. And human capital, of course, is an ever-growing process. Knowledge is an ever-growing process, and there should be no limitation to it. And perhaps if we can skill human resources with technology, that would be the only factor of production which might not confront any diminishing returns to scale. That's my understanding. Land, capital, and other factors of production might have the diminishing returns to scale, but knowledge could be ever growing and ever increasing process. And the growth process driven by knowledge itself, I think, should be the sustainable one, and it should be the one which keeps on raising productivity as well. So I think somewhere the knowledge economy should come into picture while we discuss economics and finance during this seminar. Some of the issues related to growth are also related to environment and climate change. Most developments in developing countries have taken by externalizing their environmental cost, not internalizing them in terms of making pollutions or degrading environment, or generating output at the cost of climate change. That means warming the global climate and then creating the world worse for living and facing a lot of shocks which might eventually lead to increased cost for coping those kind of shocks. We already see the cost associated with climate change mitigation and adaptation. So those things, apart from being core economic issues, are also related to what we see an improvement in human being, if you really want to see human development as the consequence of all economic and other social developments. I can also observe a couple of things in the recent world, which is the overlapping activities of institutions. The conventional central bank issues currency notes. It regulates the broader banking system. It supervises, even though supervisory work could be outsourced to some other agency. But it is conventional that the central bank has a command over currency and payment system. We don't think this is the case anymore for some of the countries. The IT companies have started issuing virtual currencies, cyber currencies. The payment system sometimes goes beyond the grip of the central bank. We sometimes don't even find the way how to grapple with such problem. So, how to manage the payment system, how to manage the banking system, how to manage the currency system at the presence of so many players in the market. In fact, IT companies are even doing payment system. And oftentimes, the role of a bank and an IT company is blurred. I don't see a clear guideline or the demarcation between these kind of institutions. It's happening in broader part of the world. Banks are doing also some jobs which are not conventional to them. Through subsidiaries, through some of their outlets, they are also doing some activities which are not conventionally done by the banking system in general. And some of their jobs are taken over by private companies, hire purchase kind of business. There are several entities which do petty banking transaction which are similar to those of the banking system. And there are shadow banking institutions, the systems, which are conventional. We see these kind of shadow banking institutions, but they have taken new shape through new technology and through new institutions emerging in the market, and they are growing larger and larger. They could be non-governmental organizations, they could be community organizations, and they could be cooperative organizations. So we can see multiple players in the financial industry at the present stage, and the role of the central bank as a regulatory and supervisory authority is oftentimes undermined at the presence of so many institutions and activities around the financial system. I think there is also a debate going on the financial inclusion. And when bankers meet, we only talk about credit, deposit, money transfer. That's not only financial inclusion. That has a wider connotation. And when you meet friends, please also talk about insurance. Without insurance being in wider coverage, the whole effort to have financial inclusion doesn't take its shape, or it is only a slogan. Because the risk management capacity of the smallholders, small entrepreneurs, is very limited. So unless we help them to manage their risk in their business, in their lives, and also in several other spectrum of their lives, perhaps the inclusion in terms of finance, which is credit and deposit or money transfer, is only a superficial argument. It doesn't change lives of the people. We have seen it. We have seen microfinance doing very well in terms of putting people out of poverty, and that's it. Have we seen microfinance leading to prosperity? No. Because as you graduate after microfinance, you are no more eligible to get the money, and banks don't trust you anymore because you are still a small holder. And that missing middle. We are trying to capture those missing middle through different other alternative financial mechanisms. And that exactly is the issue of financial inclusion at this stage. How to bring in the missing middle into broader financial network, making substantial and substantive improvements in their lives as they graduate from the level of absolute poverty and being no more eligible for any kind of microfinance. Some other issues related to finance I would like to touch upon is the non-bank financial institutions. The non-bank financial institutions gradually are taking their role as also banks. They operate with deposits, with credit, debit and credit cards, with ATMs, and with all the financial instruments which are used by the commercial banks. Except foreign exchange related activities, they do everything which the commercial banks do in many countries. So if that's the case, how do we see that the role of the commercial banks and non-bank financial institutions is defined? Or should we think about a universal banking concept that there would be banks and there would be finance companies, there would be banks and there would be insurances, and all banks will do the same job? Is it the kind of universal banking practice we are heading to? Or are we classifying banks between commercial banks, non-bank financial institutions, deposit-taking institutions, non-deposit-taking institutions, and naming differently but doing similar kind of activities? I think this is something we should be debating at this stage. Finally, I would like to touch upon some of the issues related to growth and stability and fiscal federalism, which Nepal is heading to. Growth and stability are reinforcing issues. One cannot be done at the cost of the other. Stability is precondition for growth, of course, but stability without growth is an stagnation. It doesn't lead us to any further development of a country, particularly for a country like ours, like Nepal. Stability does matter, but for the enhancement of the lives of people, growth matters even more. So, we should be balancing stability and growth to see that the preconditions of growth, which is stability, is also met, and with that strength, we keep the growth growing in our country, in Nepal. Particularly, we have been very concerned that unless we grow at a higher rate, the largest single digit or up to the lowest double-digit level growth, we may not be able to reduce absolute poverty and emerge to a middle-income country in the next 10 years' time. So, we have the urgency of growing fast, and we have to create all the environment to do the same, but that should not be at the cost of the overall stability in the economy, particularly in the macroeconomic front. Nepal is in the making. Many of our friends say so. A new Nepal is in the making. We are reconstructing everything. After the earthquake of 2015, we have been reconstructing the whole residential houses, archaeological sites, infrastructures, and everything. If you look around Kathmandu, you will see everything being reconstructed. But we have also reconstructed many things in between. The political reconstruction through the constitution, state restructuring process has taken place. And now we have the elected bodies in 753 local governments and 7 provincial governments, and one the federal government, 761, with more than 36,000 elected representatives, with nearly 41% of them being women. I think this is something which we have restructured the state. Now, in terms of restructuring the economy, in a fiscal federalism, we have started working to see that all local governments have equitable share of the state resources, which is in relation to the geography and population they encompass, and also in relation to the level of development each local government, local unit is confronting. It is taking a good shape now. We have been almost successful in rationalizing and normalizing fiscal federalism with legislations, procedures, organizations, and practices in place. So this is, I think, in 2 years' time, a good progress we have made. But federalism also needs a lot of coordination, coherence, and resources to meet the growing expectation and aspirations of people, because with federalism we have told people that basic services, basic facilities, and basic infrastructure will go to their own doorsteps. And for that, we have to have more interventions in development, which would require more resources. And that resources we have to optimize, prioritize, and we have to see that what of our responsibilities could be delivered by the private sector so that we don't have to take all the burden of development by the government itself, and that private sector is ready also to bear some of the burdens through a market and business mechanism. This is where we have been working very closely with the private sector, and I hope the issue of market failure or versus government failure should also be discussed. There are issues where government has failed, particularly government has failed in business. But unless government involves itself in basic infrastructure, in utilities, and governance, perhaps we don't create a good environment for the private sector to come in. So what we have been looking here is the complementary role between the public and the private sector, and we want to see that we don't want market to fail. Market is an integral part of development, but in order to make the market function, we have to create institutions, we have to create better governance in the public sector and also basic infrastructure where more resources are needed at the public sector. So how to finance public sector spending and how to leverage private sector in terms of propelling growth would also be an issue that we could discuss in the subsequent sessions on inclusive development, and then on how to see that 2030 meets the sustainable development goals. So with these friends, I think this is a great opportunity for our Nepali participants to learn from the global practices, experiences, and build capacity. And whereas this is also an opportunity for our expat participants to observe Nepal, see the progress, and share with us as to what are your opinions about Nepal's growth and development.
Thank you, sir, for your extremely valuable keynote speech. Now, as a token of appreciation, I would like to request Honorable Governor Dr. Chiranjeevi Nepal to present a souvenir to Honorable Finance Minister Dr. Yuvraj Khatiwada. Thank you, sir. May I now request respected Deputy Governor of Nepal Rastra Bank and Chairperson of the Conference Organizing Committee, Mr. Shivaraj Shrestha, to deliver his concluding remarks and vote of thanks.
Honorable Minister of Finance and Communication, Dr. Yuvraj Khatiwada, Honorable Governor, Dr. Chiranjeevi Nepal, Honorable former Finance Minister and former Governor, Dr. Bes Bahadur Thapa, Honorable former Governor, Mr. Dipendra Pustakal, respected NRB board members, officials from Government of Nepal, fellow Deputy Governor, Mr. Chintamani Sivakoti, former executive directors and my colleagues from Nepal Rastra Bank, chief executive officers from banks and financial institutions, representatives from IMF, the World Bank and ADB, representatives from business community, academicians, conference participants, and paper presenters, friends from media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar and very good morning. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to offer the vote of thanks to all participants and distinguished guests of this inaugural ceremony of the 3rd International Conference on Economics and Finance organized by Nepal Rastra Bank. With 2 editions successfully completed, this conference is our 3rd endeavor. The international conference aims to bring out discussion on contemporary issues of economics and finance on global, regional, national and local levels. The conference covers a wide range of topics such as macroeconomic policy, financial issues, international trade, payment systems, and socio-economic issues. With this in mind, we announced our call for papers. We obtained an overwhelming response from researchers and academicians within and outside the country. We received more than 250 abstracts, out of which we had to select a total of 72 papers for the final presentation through independent review process. It was a difficult job given high number and quality of submissions. I am thankful to our paper presenters for showing so much interest in the conference and coming here in Kathmandu. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Honorable Minister of Finance and Communication, Dr. Yuvraj Khatiwada, for gracing this event and for inaugurating the conference. We are also deeply grateful for his insightful and valuable keynote speech. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the Honorable Governor, Dr. Chiranjeevi Nepal, for his inaugural address. We have distinguished guests from international organizations, including the World Bank, IMF, ADB. Thank you for accepting our invitation and gracing us with your presence. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the third international conference has been organized to facilitate knowledge sharing in global context. I wish this conference will be a platform for effective sharing of ideas and experience among us. I am hopeful that participants will actively engage in fruitful discussions and share their ideas and knowledge to make this conference a learning center and achieve the goal we intend. The conference is expected to encourage researchers for further research and create learning opportunities for all of us on the existing and emerging issues in various fields of economics and finance. Let me also use this platform to share the information that the organizing committee will publish the conference proceedings soon and provide opportunity for wider communities to learn various stimulating ideas. It will act as a resource to learn new techniques and methods developed in the field of econometrics, finance, and statistics. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to see the devotion and hard work of my colleagues at the Research Department and General Services Department for turning this project into reality. I am also indebted to the members of Organizing Committee, Scientific Committee, Technical Committee, and referees for their untiring efforts. At the end, I would like to thank all distinguished guests, media people, and participants for their graceful presence at this event. I would like to close this session and inform all that the policy dialogue session will commence shortly after the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful deliverance. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of this opening ceremony. After the conference inaugural, we would break for refreshments, which would be followed by a policy dialogue session in this hall from 10 a.m. The session will continue for 1.5 hours, in which high-level government officials, experts, and representatives from World Bank, IMF, and ADB will express their views on agenda on sustainable inclusive growth. Now we'll adjourn for tea reception, which will be served outside the hall. Thank you very much and wish you a productive and fulfilling day ahead. Thank you.